Friends, Romans, countrymen. Friends, Greeks, countrymen? Welcome to my soapbox. I hope you enjoy your stay. So earlier this week, the casting was announced for the Disney Plus adaptation of Percy Jackson by Rick Riordan. And upon seeing it, I personally was overjoyed. I mean, first of all, look at how cute they are. Look at their little faces. And I was also just glad to see the diversity among the main trio. I think it's great that 2 out of the 3 characters are people of color. And overall, I'm just really glad that they're taking the series in that direction. I think it can only bring good. However, in addition to the pride and joy that I felt at this announcement, I got a little worried. My spidey senses started a ticking, a tingling. And I realized, oh boy, there's going to be discourse. And by discourse, I mean racism. And boy, oh boy, howdy gee willikers, was there ever racism in response to this announcement. Did this surprise me? No. Am I gonna rant about it anyway? Obviously. It got to the point where Rick Riordan actually had to make an entire statement about this, and oh my god. So he's already said his piece, and people have quieted down somewhat. Nobody's angsting to hear from me on this topic, but god damn it, I am an angry lady, hear me roar. I tend to make videos like this when I've talked about a certain subject to too many people in my waking life, and I just realize that I need to get my thoughts out there so they can get out of my head. So a lot of people are of course upset because Annabeth in the books is described as a white girl with gray eyes and blonde hair, and clearly Leah Jeffries does not match that description. And weirdly enough, people are trying to justify this by being like, well, we got no justice with the movies. The movies were so terrible and the casting choices were just awful, and we just want accurate representation of our characters. Well, I think the main grievance that we had with the casting in the movies is that the characters who are 12 in the books are now teenagers in the movies. And that's an understandable complaint because it's a middle grade book series about middle graders for middle graders. Middle graders want to see themselves on screen. And it seems like maybe the studio was just trying to broaden the potential audience to a teen demographic as well, which is just asinine. But yes, when the Lightning Thief movie came out, there was a lot of uproar over Annabeth being brunette and Grover being black. And I admittedly was among this group because I was a dumb racist 11-year-old with nothing better to do with her time. Also, however you feel about the TV series, can we all not agree that the casting of the movies was the least of their problems? Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure the problem with the main movies is that they were utter dog shit. The kids could have been of the appropriate age, and the movies still would have been terrible because they just did not follow the source material. You mentioned the source material. It's not following the source material now, is it? Because the characters are different races than they were in the books. They didn't follow the source material in terms of things that mattered, like plot and character traits. You know, the things that make a story a story. Well, she's just not how I envisioned her. She's not how she's described in the books. Okay, and a film or TV adaptation of a book is a great opportunity to expand upon and reimagine the characters in a new, different light. Also, making her black in the TV show is not going to make her black in the books. She's still white in the books, calm down. Well, if Rick Riordan wanted her to be black, then why didn't he just make her black in the books? He was a white author in 2005, a time when all white casts were very, very common, and he was probably used to seeing himself represented in media and did not see any reason to change that. Clearly, though, with the publication of his subsequent novels, he has realized the error of his ways. I mean, look at the diversity of the cast of Heroes of Olympus, Kane Chronicles, and even Magnus Chase. It's been 17 years since The Lightning Thief was published. Some people's opinions on their own work change in that amount of time. It's natural. But Annabeth in the books went against the dumb blonde stereotype, and making her black now is taking away that empowerment for millions of young blonde white girls. Are you aware that that stereotype also applies to women of color as a whole in a much more damaging way, and specifically to black women, specifically to dark-skinned black women? Yeah, there's this stereotype that black people aren't very smart or educated, and having, the smartest person in the trio being played by a black girl, I think will do a lot of good. Maybe you were once a young white blonde girl with light-colored eyes, and you had people in your life who judged you based on your hair color and automatically assumed that you were dumb because of it. And maybe you read Percy Jackson and were really empowered by the character of Annabeth Chase, and that's great. Don't you want other communities to be able to experience that same empowerment? And how she looks in the TV show isn't going to affect your past experiences with the books. Right? Not to mention, I'm pretty sure that we as a society have kind of moved past the dumb blonde thing. I'm almost certain that we just don't have time for it anymore. And if I'm wrong, if we're still believing in the whole dumb blonde thing, then just go watch Legally Blonde. You have an entire movie deconstructing the dumb blonde stereotype. And generally speaking, I don't understand the reluctance to give up the whiteness of this character as if it matters to her personal identity in the books. You clearly have a connection to her. Are you going to have less of a connection to her because of her blackness? There's a word for that. And I see a lot of people bringing up the argument, well, what if they made Hazel white in the show, or Frank, or Piper, or Leo? So you, however old you may be, are clearly old enough to use the internet. I should think that you are aware of the fact that we live in an unjust and unequal society. If you are not aware of that, holy shit. But for argument's sake, let's say you do know this, but you still haven't grasped that members of an underprivileged, oppressed group are allowed to make fun of, criticize, or claim as their own things that belong to the oppressive, privileged group, but it's not okay for it to be the other way around. Yeah, it's okay for a person of color to make jokes about white people, but it's not okay for white people to make offensive jokes about people of color because, I mean, if you don't know why, then maybe you have some more reading to do than just Percy Jackson. I've also seen some people say that, like, they hope they give Annabeth blonde hair and gray eyes in the show, and on the one hand, sure, that would be very cute if Annabeth had blonde braids, for instance. And I think it would be good to help us diversify and reimagine the mental image that comes to mind whenever somebody says a blonde girl, and instead of imagining a blonde white girl, we could imagine a blonde girl of other ethnicities. On the other hand, I have also been made aware of this trend in animation specifically. It's this thing where they have a dark-skinned character who has light hair and light eyes. All too often, it is a dark-skinned black character with white hair and blue eyes. Light-colored hair and eyes are typically traits associated with lighter-skinned people, particularly white people. Obviously, there are real-life people of color who have light hair and light eyes naturally, and, like, that's just the way they are, and yeah. But at the same time, a lot of these animators will design a character who has dark skin, but white attributes in order to make them more appealing. And overall, it's kind of harmful because the people watching this media, desperate for representation, aren't really getting it. And I don't know about you, but I'd rather not see this extend to live action. Now, one point that was brought up that actually does kind of concern me is the fact that in the books, Annabeth's father is kind of an absent father. They don't live together and she doesn't see him very often, and they just kind of have a strained relationship. Annabeth being black in this show probably means that she has a black father, and that scenario could contribute to the harmful stereotype that black fathers are absent from their children's lives. And yes, I think that's a valid concern. I'm worried about that as well. I hope they handle it with a degree of nuance. But I don't think that that detail alone is reason enough to not cast somebody who, according to Rick Riordan himself, is perfect for the role. Side note, I've seen a lot of people criticizing Disney themselves for this. Well, Disney's just trying to be woke. They're trying to get woke points. They're just facing the pressure to make their shit more diverse. Yeah, sort of. I don't think that applies to this situation, though. I do think that applies when they do their stupid live-action remakes of animated movies and they try to justify the existence of said remakes by, like, wokeifying them. And they do that by trying to make some sort of clumsy feminist narrative by shoehorning in misogyny that the female characters can overcome, because that's the only way to do feminism in movies, apparently. They gotta sing about how they're not gonna be silenced and then get captured immediately after. Yep, one more coin in the feminism jar? Oh yeah! But there's a difference between that and casting a black actress in a role. Oh my god, I even saw someone say that, like, it would ruin their immersion to have a black person in a story. I can only assume from that statement that you've never seen a black person in your waking life. I promise you they are out there. People brought up that they want to see, like, original black Disney characters rather than converting white characters to black characters, and ¿por qué no los dos? But, like, I do see what you mean. People do deserve original black characters in Disney movies. I think that is very true. However, whenever Disney does it, they tend to turn their black characters into non-humans for a majority of the runtime, so maybe we should just let them use somebody else's IP for a little bit, until they learn. Also, why specifically are we upset about the casting of Leah Jeffries but not Ariane Samadri? Some people are using the excuse that Grover's skin tone is never really specified in the books, but I have 2 theories of my own. Theory number 1, in the movies we had a black Grover and now we have a brown Grover, and according to anti-blackness and colorism, a brown Grover is more palatable than a black Grover, which... ew. Theory number 2, it's just misogyny. Of an anti-black variety. It could also partly be because Annabeth is Percy's love interest, and Grover obviously isn't, and people are weirded out at the idea of, like, I don't know, an interracial couple. But there is definitely this trend in Western media where black people, particularly black women, are not given romantic storylines or happy endings to their love lives. Hi, Vampire Diaries. And again, I think it would be cool to have a black person in what is for a lot of people their childhood OTP. It's certainly mine. And, if you're still upset about the casting and you've heard all of my statements and none of them strike a chord with you, and it truly is just the matter of book accuracy, I'm guessing that you were equally upset about Harry's blue eyes and Ron's green eyes and Hermione's pink dress. And if you care that much about something so arbitrary, then I can't stop you. All I can say is I hope the view is nice from the top of this hill that you've chosen to die on.